Hello and welcome. We're actually going to go ahead and get started with installing our Unreal Engine 5.6, creating our first project, and getting our project settings set up. So if you haven't already, go ahead and install the Epic Games Launcher. I'll leave a link in the description below in case you haven't. There are some prerequisites to some of these videos here where you have some basic understanding of how a game engine works. I'll be talking about tips and tricks as I go along, but some basic understanding would help. Maybe I'll do another series in the future about what we have. So after you install your engine versions here, go ahead and click launch for 5.6. I did most of the work in 5.5, so there might be some minor differences, but that's okay. We'll figure them out as we go together. All right, once 5.6 is opened up, we could go ahead and click our Games tab here, and we'll be using a first-person template. We won't be doing a lot with what's already built in here, but that's okay. That's kind of cool. So what we could do here is pick our project location. I'm going to go ahead and pick one that I have set up for toolkits and a specific folder. This toolkit will be for our escape room. And then here, you could go ahead and name it what you would like. I'm going to call it Toolkit Escape Room and click Create. Alrighty, now that we have our project open, let's change around a few settings. The first thing you might notice is we might have two different variations of a screen here. That's okay. Over here, I just decided to dock my outliner and my details panel. Yours might look something like this, and that is totally okay. In order to dock them to the side like me, you could simply right-click and dock the sidebar. I'm a bigger fan of doing this so I can have a wider screen and kind of just click as I need what I need. The next thing I'd like to do is go ahead and go over here into project settings. And for all settings, editor preferences. And what I like to do is change this asset editor open location. Instead of default, I like to change it to the main window. Basically what that does is if I go ahead and open up, to go to my content, first person, blueprint, and character, for instance, when I open up the character, it's going to open up on this tab here on the top. Traditionally, what it would do is just kind of open right in front of your screen like this. I'm not a big fan of that because I'm constantly resizing the window. So it's just kind of like a quick ease of access type of thing you could do. All right. Next thing we're going to do is create a showcase for all of our future mechanics. So while this level is cool, and if you want to, you could go ahead and click play and check it out. But we're going to be removing the majority of this stuff. And again, the reason why is this is going to be our showcase room. I'm not really a huge fan of building out an entire level while just working on the mechanics. So what we're going to do here is figure out where we want to showcase our mechanics and set up little sections to do so. So we really don't need any of these little blocks here. You can go ahead and delete them. This template is a little bit different, so if I remember correctly, yeah, this wall is not fully set up, so we'll bring this up by 2 more and then drag it back down. And by 2 more, I mean 3 more. So that way it matches the top. You can get rid of this one. And adjust as we go. Perfect. Do that a couple more times. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you're like me, you're going to try to get as close as you possibly can to making it perfect. Awesome. So we have our simple, very easy, big square layout. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our sections here of what we're going to make. Right, so we can go ahead and click this little drop down here. We're going to grab a text render actor and open up our details panel. I'm going to go ahead and undock this for now, so that way I can get a better idea of what we're doing. Let's rotate it 180 degrees, take this out just a little bit. We are definitely going to increase the size. Let's say 150. Maybe that'll work. We'll see. And we'll call this one controls. More specifically, if you want to, you could call it player controls. Up to you. Seems a little big. Let's go ahead and drop this just slightly. Cool. You can go ahead and center it if you'd like. And then we are going to go ahead and keep this as white. I kind of like to do a little bit color coordinated thing here. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out here. We're going to call this one inventory because we are going to need a very basic inventory. We're going to pull this one out here and call this one interactables because these are some of the game mechanics that we talked about in the preview video. And we'll kind of go over this more into some like pre-production type of thing to kind of figure out, the exact layout of what we're doing. So on this wall over here, we can go ahead and drag out another text. And real quick, in case you don't know what I'm doing to copy and paste that, I'm clicking on the logo and I'm holding down the Alt key and I'm clicking and dragging. What that does is kind of allow me to make multiple copies at the same time. Let's go ahead and change this to puzzles. So any type of puzzle that we create and interact with, we can go ahead and put on this wall. It could be a series of different ones or whatever we want it to be. Let's go ahead and create one on this side. We can call this one, let's rotate. Let's call this one enemies. Actually, let's call it simple enemy. For the purposes of this toolkit, we are basically going to have one simple enemy. The enemy will chase the player. It'll roam, spot the player, chase the player, catch the player. We're not really getting into a full-blown combat here. That's going to be beyond the scope. We're just trying to get our feet wet and our minds moving in the realm of game design, right? Okay, let's go ahead and create another section. Another thing some escape room games will need is a checkpoint system. So we'll go ahead and develop our checkpoint systems here. And another thing that I saw that was really cool and that I'm kind of going to implement here into the toolkits is hiding, right? So we kind of have that simple enemy. We'll also have, hiding. Perfect. So now we have a simple setup of what we're going to do. I think the first thing we're going to start working on is going to be controls. So what I like to do here is kind of make this a nice yellow to let me know that, hey, we're actually going to be in progress in this system, right? So for our controls, let's go ahead and go back to white here. You can click this little arrow to go to default. This is going to be way too small of a text. Let's go to 50. Cool. And we can kind of showcase here what our controls will be. We are going to need an interact, right? So let's go ahead and do E for interact. Let's go ahead and do, let's do a crouch. So I like to do control for crouch. You could do C, you can do a combination of both. It's up to you. We can, it's just a placeholder for now. And then let's go ahead and do our sprint in case you want a sprint. We'll call this one left shift, which will be sprint. Great. And if you want to hide these really quick to get a better idea of what you're doing, you can press the G key and that'll hide it for you. So we have our basic controls. Great. For our inventory, I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag one of these over here. We're going to need some keys for our keys and locked doors, whatever it may be. We can have some like interactable objects, or we can have important objects. We could just call these objects. Something that you hide. It acts the same way as a key, just maybe a little bit different functionality. And then what we'll also add here, if you would like, and this is optional, but we're going to build it into the toolkit anyway, is a currency of some type. So the currency doesn't have to be, doesn't have to hold monetary value. It could be, you collect 5 VHS tapes like the Backrooms games. You could do something like, oh, I collected 3 tchotchkes and I have an extra life, or anything it may be. But whatever that will be related to currency, right? So really quick, let's go ahead and get over here to our interactables. Turn this back on. Perfect. And let's talk about what we want our interactables to be. We definitely need doors. We're definitely going to need some type of lever and buttons. So let's go ahead and do levers and buttons. Let's see. We could do elevators. These are relatively easy to implement. Even if you don't use them in your game, the idea here is to have it set up so it can be used in your game. We're building some framework here that we could use a little bit later. So I think this is good for now. These will kind of be like our first section of what we're going to work on. So let's go ahead and talk about puzzles really quick. Let's go over here. And you could use the natural environment to include some of these interactables as puzzles, right? So you can hide the keys, you can have the keys open up a lever, but the lever opens up a door and kind of connect puzzles that way, which could, you know, have some pretty interesting gameplay effects there. So for one puzzle, we are going to have like a rotating object. So we'll call this rotating objects. If you think like Resident Evil, sometimes you have to rotate a puzzle to get in the right place. That's pretty cool. I like those. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll do pattern recognition, right? So we'll do patterns. Um, let's pause for these two for now. So that might be a nice little combination of those. For hiding, let's go ahead and rotate this. A lot of these fun indie games lately have been coming out with really cool ways to hide from enemies. So let's go ahead and do lockers, right? Or cabinets, or whatever it may be. And then we'll do surfaces. These could include tables, desks, whatever you think it'll work out. So lockers and hiding. Checkpoints are self-explanatory, so we don't really need to go in depth of what we're adding to checkpoints. We could just add them. But we are going to go ahead and take our simple enemy, and let's break down what we want our simple enemies to do, right? So we want them to roam. We want them to spot and chase our player. And we want them to catch our player, right? So a lot of this you could see in especially Escape the Backrooms or those type of games where you have, by the way, I'm saving all by pressing Control Shift S. You'll see on the bottom left there, all of this just went ahead and saved. So ideally, the enemy will be roaming around in a certain pattern and have a detection radius until they, detect a player. They'll continue to chase the player. The player can hide or break their line of sight, and eventually the enemy could go back to roam. And then when the player is caught, the functionality is going to be up to us in the long run, but we're going to build it in a modular way. You can either restart the entire level, we can go back to a checkpoint, we can do a full game over, you're going back to the main menu. It's up to you and kind of what game you're hoping to make. So this is the project setup. We have our big playroom here. We could make this smaller, a little bit bigger as we need, but ideally this will be somewhere where if you have a team, everybody can go and just take a look at, hey, this is what we're doing here. Let's roll with it. And before we move on to the next video, I did want to address something really quick that'll help us out in the long run. Let's go ahead and dock this. I'm going to go ahead and open up the content drawer. That's going to be Control Space. Or if you want to, you can go ahead and click this. That's fine. While we talk about this, I'm going to go ahead and dock this into the layout right there. And then if you need to, you can get rid of it by pressing the X and do the same thing. But let's dock this into the layout. Let's go ahead and go to our content here and talk about some. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. There we go. Some different file structures that we could use for our project. So let me go ahead and open up a sticky note here. I use these a lot. I highly recommend you do so as well. Call this file structure. Great. So I've seen people do file structure in a few different ways. Sometimes it depends on the studio. I've worked in AAA studio. I've worked at indie, solo. So this is going to be a little bit up to you and how you want to approach this. So some file structures that I've seen have worked with the system that you're working on, and then you'll have subfolders that will contain different file types. So file type 1, file type 2, file type 3. So an example of this could be we're building our puzzle, right? So our puzzle 1 is our system. The file type 1 is going to be our blueprints. Our next thing is going to be our UI, and then we're going to have audio, right? So everything is kind of nested into what this is. And this kind of helps out, just keeps things organized. Another way that I've seen it, and we could call this method 1. I almost said method man. Get distracted. And we'll call this one method 2. So method 2 will be something where like you'll have what we have here on the bottom left, you can kind of see content, characters, first person, input. We'll go ahead and have something that says like blueprints. We'll have UI, we'll have materials, we'll have meshes, we'll have audio, and then we'll have pretty much that's it, I guess you could say. Or I mean, we could have like other things like game components. Um, if I can type, good lord. And then we could have, data tables and all that other fun stuff. So this method works. Again, I'm not a fan of this, but you could do it this way. But like essentially what you'll have here is the blueprints for puzzle 1, the blueprints for puzzle 2, the blueprints for puzzle 3, and then you'll have your character blueprint, and then you'll have your inventory component, and then you'll have crafting if we have crafting. So everything is going to be housed underneath this blueprint section. The reason why I'm not a big fan of this is that when you have to go into especially with these two, inventory and crafting, if you're building a bigger game, you're going to have to go into the UI and you're going to have to specifically find the one for UI inventory, UI crafting, and things like that. So that gets a little bit tricky because it's not organized, and I would prefer it. My own method here is method 1, where I'd rather have, hey, everything related to puzzle 1 is in this, and then you can kind of have some catch-all folders that'll kind of house whatever else you need, right? So as we go, I'm going to be sticking with method 1. If you want to stick with method 2, that's totally fine. Again, the preference is all yours. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder here, and I'm going to call this one Toolkit. There are some things we're going to take from these other folders, and that's totally okay. But I would just like to go ahead and create one here called Toolkit, and I'm going to make another folder here called Player. Just to kind of keep things a little bit more organized. So I'm going to go into characters here. Here's our meshes, our rigs, our textures. This can stay here. Where is it? First person. Here we go. Blueprints. I'm going to go ahead and move our first person character into our player folder here. So we're going to go ahead and click move. Now, sometimes Unreal gets a little strange. So we're going to click on content, right click, and update redirector references. Essentially, what this is doing is telling the engine, hey, just let you know we moved this, we put it here. So if you have anything pointing in this old direction, it's no longer here. Update it to where we just put it in this folder structure. Yeah, so let's go ahead and keep moving some first person stuff here. Animations are okay. That's fine. We're not really using these. We do have a lot of important information here. So in the toolkit, we're going to go ahead and make a new folder here, and we're going to call this game info. Again, you can name it whatever you want, but essentially what we're doing is we're taking our player controller. Well, the player controller could go into player. This is our game mode, so we'll go ahead and move that here. And then our camera manager. Let's go ahead and move this into game mode, or game info as well. If we need to move it later, we can. That's fine. See, here we go. We're going to go ahead and delete the unreferenced actors. Control-Shift-S to save all. And we're going to go ahead and go down the line here. Oops, content, first person, blueprints, great. So the blueprints are gone. Input. So the input here I think is pretty important. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the player as well. And I'm going to go ahead and take the actions. Actually, what I could do is I could just take this whole action folder and move it here. Great. Go ahead and update redirector references. Awesome. And we're going to get a little bit more organized here. Let's move these two. Perfect. Update redirector references, and awesome. So we have our toolkit here. We can go ahead and minimize the other folders and content, and we can predominantly focus on our toolkit section. And if you want to, you can go ahead and right-click this, and there is an option here, as soon as I can find it, add to favorites. So we do have a favorite tab up here in case instead of searching all around this, you don't like to, you could just click here. It'll bring you right to the toolkit section. So as we keep going, we'll keep building this out and adding more to our toolkit.